Here we are, folks. It is 8:05 on this Monday, September 22nd. Take a look at the last little glimmer of the sunset there from our SkyTrack camera across the river, enjoying that skyline sunset of downtown Louisville. As we welcome you into tonight's edition of Wave News Extra, always appreciate you joining us, whether that's through the Wave Now app on your smart TV device, on the different social media channels. I'm Jose Sosaya here with the dust background in the Wave Now studio. We're going to dive right into some of the big stories of the day. Just another way for those of you unwinding on your Monday night, starting the work week, just kind of touching up on some of the big stories maybe you've been hearing about or reading up on, but just another avenue to just discuss those. And just so you know, these are the stories we're staying on top of. Hope you stick around for a little bit later on tonight's stream, just because I'm going to have two great conversations I want you to tune in for. One being my chance to meet one of 10 new NASA potential future astronaut candidates. She is a Kentucky native right out of Goshen. So can't wait for you all to meet Lieutenant Commander Erin Overcash. She's a Navy test pilot. So pretty cool to pick her brain and sort of see how she's going to approach the next 2 years of pretty intense training down in Houston. And the other, just a conversation with our Logan Perrone over a pretty troubling case out further east of Lexington, because there was a murder of a mom and her young daughter. And it seems like the suspect that police say they nabbed in Paducah has a violent history. And we kind of dig back into what that prior case was like a little over 20 years ago. So something we're going to spend some time discussing there. And at the very end, I want to shout out the folks who joined us maybe on Friday night, who were hoping to at least maybe not get the sound of the set list, but the visuals of the Louder Than Life stage out on the Expo Center Fairgrounds. We didn't have a camera that could kind of, sort of hover over and look at what was going on from a distance, because you could still see the Kentucky Kingdom rides a little closer in the foreground. But just want to share a bit of a recap of the festival fun that happened over the weekend from one of our more seasoned photographers, photojournalists. So we're going to dive right into a story that starts with a deadly explosion. Now Metro arson investigators looking into this production site. One person died Sunday afternoon. This happened at the AAK plant in the Shively neighborhood. Now, we did a little digging. According to the website, AAK says it specializes in plant-based oils and fats. We're told the explosion happened outside of the main building, which we did get some video of, if you could see from our different angles. Shively's fire chief telling us the explosion happened from a hydrogen tank. Apparently there was a conversion process that was happening. So this is where the explosion happened, relating to the hydrogen tank. And we do know, unfortunately, one person died because of the explosion. We don't know their name yet. The coroner has not released that information up until my last check. We did talk to a couple neighbors, though, our Wave News team going out to Shively. They were, one, of course, shocked to find out that this actually happened, because the AAK plant right across the street from a neighborhood and plenty of smaller stores and businesses. People say they often see the workers come into work, leave work for their shipments quite often. One woman who spoke to our Fernando Garcia Franciscini earlier today says she was at her house when the explosion happened, and she describes what it felt like.
Oh, I heard this big noise. It sounded like a tractor trailer probably hit one of those big silver poles. And then the floor kind of shook a little bit.
So in a statement that was posted online, and we found it, AAK says it is cooperating fully with authorities for their investigation. The statement also says, as a precaution, their operations and part of the plant where the explosion happened, those have been shut down. Louisville Metro Arson, again, investigating what could have caused them the fire, just to make sure that they find the clues and evidence they would need to make that conclusion. Of course, as we learn more, maybe we find out the identity of the poor soul who died. We'll keep you updated both on air and online as we learn more. I'm setting up to some videos right now. This November, for folks in the community, it's going to mark 1 year since actually another tragic and deadly explosion, November 12th of 2024. That's when the Givaudan Sense factory in the Clifton neighborhood exploded. And then this is, more of the video we've been following and got ever since the explosion first happened. 2 employees killed, 11 more hurt in the explosion. It caused, countless cases of damage to homes and businesses just nearby. And in fact, the demolition of the plant itself cleared another hurdle. what you're watching here is a little bit of a video. It's a vote involving the Clifton Architectural Review Committee, or ARC, as it were, for the acronym. As part of a permitting process, they had to make sure the demolition was not going to disturb anything important in the Clifton Preservation District. And today, we were told there was going to be no opposition to that. Current plans for the demolition are for the entire site, whatever traces of Givaudan are there, and that's to be followed by a seeding, so setting up grass on the property. When it's done, Givaudan will be replaced by a green space that would then wait for any future development whenever that decision's made. In the meantime, though, the city and Metro council leaders say they're moving closer to staying on top of issuing that demolition permit.
You know, they're still waiting to get their demolition permit. And that will come, I think, here soon, as long as they hit the thresholds or the things that were requested in the meeting today.
And that was Councilman Andrew Owen there. About a month ago, an update was preparing the community for what was going to happen. Demolition can be noisy, will be noisy at times, and work's going to go on during regular business hours and some weekends. So a bit of the warnings there from Metro leaders. They expect, though, once it started, it would take about a month and a half to fully finish the demolition of what's there on the Givaudan plant. More updates for you tonight. University of Louisville, their new president now responding after comments made by some that the school was not doing enough to ensure safety after the deadly murder and shooting of activist Charlie Kirk out in Utah. Graphic posters had popped up in several places around campus recently on UVL's campus depicting Kirk's death. He was shot and killed just September 10th, talking to a crowd at Utah Valley University's campus. 12 Republican members of Metro Council's Minority Caucus issued a statement today, and they called out the university, claiming that it's yet to publicly denounce A, the posters, and B, to reassure students' safety on campus.
Right. So they have to ensure they have an environment where people do not feel like they will be killed, or that the university is implicitly allowing people to express the view that those that express certain points of view should be killed on campus.
So now the Metro Minority Caucus calling on U of L to explain what steps it is taking to investigate those posters. They're also requesting university to publicly reaffirm students and speakers are safe and welcome to participate in civil debate. What I'm going to bring up really quick is some graphics, because they are a statement from the new president, Jerry Bradley. Let's see if I can bring that up here. Dr. Bradley, writing in part, my appeal to the U of L community is this: can we openly embrace conversations of differing viewpoints without offense and learn from those conversations? The next part of that statement, which you can read the full one, by the way, on wave3.com. Whether you are on the right, the center, or the left, we can have open, civil, honest, and respectful conversations. So that was the official response there from Dr. Bradley. Of course, whatever comes of this, something we'll certainly update you here on air and online. Another interesting story is the manhunt that's still going on for an escaped inmate from Brown County Jail, believed to have been, somewhat cornered in a large woods or forested area in northern Kentucky. If you remember when we talked about it, it started Monday at the Brown County Jail. About a week ago, deputies say Roy Butler and Jerry Cooper broke through a window and got over a fence. The two crossed the Ohio River in a stolen paddle boat, but they split up once they got to Dover, which is between Maysville and Augusta. That's where a lot of deputies have been focusing their search for days. So deputies found Butler the very next day after they escaped. He was in jail on drug trafficking charges, but Cooper, again, still on the run. You see images of the security cameras catching his steps and his movements there, charged with attempted murder. The FBI saying he was being held, waiting trial for an alleged role in a murder for hire plot. Investigators believe Cooper allegedly shot a man in the chest earlier this year. And their latest update, the Mason County Sheriff's Office says they're now looking to try and pinpoint where he could be through 1,200 acres of woods. That's Sheriff Ryan Swolsky. This is where he grew up. He knows every nook, cranny, cave, and holler. We're where he's hunted his whole life, so he is very, very familiar. More than a dozen law enforcement agencies all trying to work together, but the dense woods are complicating the search, even with helicopters. As you can see, they're trying to use heat-seeking technology, heat signature technology. The sheriff's office says they believe Cooper has a rifle, so he poses a major threat to officers and deputies. They also believe he might be getting help from someone trying to keep him away from police to be caught again. So that's how he's evading them. There's a reward up for $10,000 for any information leading to Cooper's arrest, just so that is being shared by FBI's Louisville Bureau for any help in assisting the Mason County Sheriff's Office try to find Jerry Lee Cooper. So something we'll certainly keep you abreast of if deputies, investigators, federal agents are able to find him and bring him back to custody. Now, real quick, to a Wave News investigation, because we've learned a man sat in jail for months for a crime his attorney right there says he never committed. Michael Anderson, you saw his picture there. He was arrested last year in front of his kids the day before Christmas. His attorney says a warrant claimed that he shot at a woman in a case of domestic violence, and the shooting was caught on camera. But the victim in that case told police a man named Michael Anderson shot at her. The problem, according to attorney Sarah Collins here, LMPD arrested the wrong Michael Anderson. And so now she is filing a lawsuit hoping that the department has some answers for her and her client.
I would like them to be accountable to the extent that they analyze the situation and say, what could have we done better? What was our part in this? And not just focus on the detective's mistake.
And there are more layers to this case, by the way. Our investigative team is still working to uncover some of them. We're going to have more on the story later this week. In fact, as our troubleshooters are really focusing in on more of these details, that's going to be something you're going to want to join us for throughout the next coming days right here on Wave News for sure. Bring you back in the studio as it is 8:16. Right after this quick break, I'm going to share my conversation with new NASA candidate, Navy test pilot, Lieutenant Commander Erin Overcash. So be stick around for this part of tonight's Wave Extra, looking ahead then to our Logan Perone sitting in studio talking about this tragic murder case out in Rowan County and their connection points to a murder suspect that had been in prison for a long time beforehand. And then looking ahead as we wrap up toward the end of tonight's hour. Appreciate you doing that. We're going to be right back with much more of tonight's Wave News Extra. Just off the top, it's a treat to be able to talk to you. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. Very proud to be here and represent Kentucky.
So why don't we start with, I know in the bio really quick, it puts it in the context of, okay, born in Louisville, but I feel like you would say, no, Goshen, you have to represent there. So put me in your shoes. What was, growing up, and this will kind of lead into sort of how you discovered these passions you obviously have, but what was childhood like?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Goshen, Kentucky, so suburbs outside Oldham County, suburbs, I'd say, outside of, Metro Louisville area. Very fortunate to have an incredible school system and really supportive parents and teachers always challenge me. I was that kid who was glued to the airplane window growing up, so obsessed with all things aviation and space flight from an early age. And had mentors and teachers identify that and really push me to be better and never just accept good enough. Keep going for as best as you possibly can, and let that kind of lead your path in life. So yeah, born and raised Oldham County, went to North Oldham High School, class of 2009, shout out Mustangs. Went through, I knew I wanted to study aerospace engineering. So I actually ended up in college at the University of Colorado Boulder, because at the time Kentucky didn't have an aerospace program, but still very proud to be from Kentucky and the Louisville area and Goshen in particular, and represent my hometown.
Just looking at your resume, I've got it like printed out here. I guess, were all these things like you knew you wanted to pursue, for example, in your bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, bioastronautics? I couldn't tell you that's a specialty I knew existed.
No, I think, as is probably true with most people, I had this like inner love for aviation and space flight, and then kind of just made the most of the moment every step of the way. So I ended up in Colorado to study aerospace engineering for my bachelor's degree. The bioastronautics was my master's degree. And so getting to know the program, getting to know the fact that there were so many astronauts who had been through the University of Colorado before, I'm sitting there as a college sophomore and I'm like, oh, that'd be pretty cool. I wonder if I could do that. And just gave it my all, tried my best. I'm a Navy test pilot. That's where I'm coming from before NASA. So I had an ROTC scholarship to the University of Colorado. I needed help to pay for out of state tuition, and that was my open door into that opportunity, the education. But I owed time and service to my country. So I had a path and a goal for naval aviation before I had a path and a goal for astronauts. So kind of every step along the way, just tried the best I could, and saw what was interesting to me next and went for it.
Not to also then or forget to include just how it seems you pursued passions beyond just your love of aviation, Commander. Where I'm just looking out here, your training regiment with the training center with the USA Rugby Women's National Team. I mean, was that also the rugby love? Was that there early from the get-go too?
I think that was also a journey of opportunities. I was a Kentucky high jump state champion, track and field in high school, and that going to college, I was on the track team, the D1 track team in college for a while. I left that for time management reasons. I was doing ROTC and track and field and aerospace, and it wasn't all going to work out. So I kind of changed my interest, and I picked up rugby in college, and was fortunate to have a lot of really great coaches and support staff. And the USA Rugby headquarters is actually in the town that I went to college in. So made the most of it, had the opportunity to have some really good mentors and teachers, and made the most of it along the way. So yeah.
So put me and I asked this question because I always know it's harder sometimes to pinpoint that exact moment, but put me in your headspace. Was there a day, an opportunity, a question, a conversation where you, I guess, said the words out loud finally, like, okay, I think I'm going to go try to become an official astronaut with NASA?
That is kind of a crazy question. I mean, I still feel like that little kid from Goshen watching the world go by, and just trying to like make the most of it as it comes. So the interview process for NASA, well, the application process started almost a year and a half ago, early 2024. And at that time, I was kind of at a crossroads in my military career as well. Do I stay? Do I go? What should I try for next? So kind of all these things happened at the same time. And I ended up submitting my application to NASA kind of on a whim, like everyone who's a test pilot in the military or otherwise applies to be an astronaut. I mean, it's a lot of people's dream, right? And you go into it knowing that your chances are so small, it's just probably not going to happen. And I got called for the first round of interviews in February, and that was 120 people. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then I got called for the second round of interviews in May, and that was 40 people. And that was the first time my spouse and I were like, wow, maybe we should start thinking about making plans. Like this could actually happen. And, I got the call in July, and it's a really hard secret to keep. But, all of a sudden it's like your life changes, and wouldn't be here alone. Great support system. I've got a spouse and a family and all kinds of friends and family back in Kentucky, mentors back in Kentucky who support me. So thank you to everyone who got me here. Couldn't have done it alone.
You mentioned how hard it is to keep that secret. Who was the first person you spilled the beans to?
Well, I got the call. It was a Monday night, and it was late in the evening on the East Coast time. So I had finished my flight schedule for the day. I was about a week away from joining my next squadron on deployment. So I literally had my sea bags packed. I was ready to go. I had to complete a couple of training flights, and then I was going to go meet my aircraft carrier in the Atlantic as they're starting their deployment. So rumors were kind of going around our interview group of hey, I think calls might be going out today. Did you get a call? Did you get a call? And no one had gotten a call. So I was like, well, that's probably it for me. I'm going to bed making plans to go on deployment. And it was 8:30 at night, and I get a call, and my cell phone says unknown. And my spouse and I were on the couch, and we're throwing pillows and blankets, trying to find the remote, turn the TV off real quick. And we had this last pause where we looked at each other and made eye contact and smiled, realizing this could be the moment that changes our lives. And it did. So it was funny. I actually answered the phone, and it was the chief astronaut and an head of HR at NASA who made the offer, and they phrased their question do you still want the job? And so the first words I said on the phone call were, no way. I mean, yes, of course I want the job, but no way. It was a pretty surreal moment for my spouse and I. But yeah, we sat on that news for a couple of days. It was a pretty special couple of days of knowing that everything was about to change for the better. And then we started telling our immediate family, parents and siblings, because we're about to make a big move in our lives and a big transition. So that we had to let them in on the secret.
That's I know I muted the audio. You couldn't hear me just enjoying that ride of a story with you. It was great to hear that. So my head is thinking, talk to me as far as maybe you have a million questions swirling around your head, unless you've already been told kind of what to expect going through these first 2 years. What do you even think is, or how would you describe what is about to happen over the next 2 years?
Yeah, so the next 2 years, astronaut candidate training, we are going to be exposed to a whole plethora of skills that are relevant for human space flight. So we will start language training next week. We are going to do land survival training. So we'll actually, as a class, go out into the wilderness and be taught various survival techniques in environments that mimic where we might find ourselves in human space flight. We're going to do, I'm a test pilot background. So those of us who are pilots, we're going to do T-38 training at first and get qualified to fly that supersonic jet aircraft. And then our classmates who are not pilots, they then get to start flying with us in the back seat. They'll go through an aviation syllabus as well in the T-38. We will end up in the neutral buoyancy laboratory. So NASA has a gigantic pool, and you learn how to scuba dive in your spacesuit, and you go down into the pool in your spacesuit simulating extravehicular activity, and there's a space station mock-up in there, and so you learn how to do maintenance and move things and move your body to execute experiments and do training relevant to being on the space station. At some point we'll do geology field camps where we will learn how to analyze our environment and what types of rocks and resources do we have with us. So all of our training is geared towards maintaining life in an extreme environment and accomplishing the goals of human space flight later on.
And I imagine that training means you have to stay pretty close to camp or your training grounds. Just for folks who may not know where you all will have to call home base, where is that?
Yes,
there is home base, I guess. But
well, we will all be based out of Houston. I mean, Houston JSC Johnson Space Center is the home of the astronauts. So this is home base. I'm sure we will travel a lot to all those various trainings. I'm relatively new here, so I still have a lot to learn. So I'm not entirely sure what our travel schedule will be, but I know that's a big component as we move forward as a team.
you coming into this now as, you know, a candidate, going through the process, I'm curious if you've, in any of your reading of NASA's own illustrious history, if there was like any one of the past astronauts who you'd love to pick their brains about what this part of the process is going to be.
I have had this week the opportunity to meet my heroes in the astronaut office, which is a pretty incredible experience. I have always really admired Nicole Mann. She is a Marine Corps Hornet test pilot, had gone through some of the same squadrons that I had gone through as a test pilot. So having similar backgrounds, I had always really admired her and looked up to her. And now she's the deputy chief astronaut. So she was on our interview board, and she's, you know, leading us in our class as we arrive here and get started. So that's a pretty special occasion for me.
Am I keeping you all good on time? Just looking at the clock, or
We could probably do one more.
I had my internal clock was telling me maybe this was going to be the final question, but that's okay. So here you are. Well, I guess I guess I'm thinking of going through this with you. Just like, how are you managing? Maybe this has come from your past, experience of how to sort of manage the pressures and the emotions and the different experiences you're about to go through. Just put folks in how you think you'll be able to navigate all this.
Well, I told a story today, which I'll tell again. Being a Navy sailor, we often find ourselves in a ship in the middle of the ocean for a really long period of time. And in my case, on an aircraft carrier, you're with 5,000 people. So even though the ship looks really big, it's actually a pretty confined space. And there's really no such thing as privacy or personal time that doesn't exist in that environment. I think having a lot of time on a ship and several deployments under my belt, what I hope to bring to this astronaut candidate class is some perspective on, you know, when your environment is challenging, and you got to be really good. One, you got to get to know your teammates really well. You have to learn the skill of setting boundaries, which is a hard skill to learn at times. And then you got to learn how to respect each other and work as professionals through the good and the bad. And ultimately, you know, that jointness of getting through a hard challenge together really brings you closer. So I'm sure that our astronaut candidate class will get to that point, and we will have opportunities to learn along the way. I just hope that some of my Navy experience can kind of enlighten the group at times when that's necessary. And I'm sure that I will learn a lot from them. And, you know, maybe what works here is totally different than what I've known before. So I'm excited for the challenge.
folks. Welcome into this edition of tonight's Wave News Extra. Happy to be joined by our Wave News reporter, Logan Perrone. And Logan having time now with his new schedule to really dive into an investigation that, on the surface, of course, it's horrifying details because the tragic circumstance, Logan, you found this out, is the case of a mom and a daughter murdered. And in the investigation, after we learned about a suspect's arrest, there's apparently some connection points to another pretty grisly crime not too back. So walk us through, obviously, I think the folks at home will be really interested when you walk us through the work and the things you were looking into to find this information today, but perhaps get us acquainted with the case as it is today.
Yeah, so I want to start by saying this happened later in the day on Friday, actually about an hour east of Lexington. So that's where this latest crime took place. So what had happened was a mother and a daughter. You see that right there. That's one of the pictures of them too. We have Kayla Blake as the mother, and it is Kennedy McWhorton. I believe I'm getting that right. It's been a long day, folks, adjusting to this new schedule. But we had those two confirmed by the Rowan County coroner on Friday as being deceased in a home just outside of my gosh, I'm blanking on the town.
We do know it's east of the Lexington area, right? Moorhead.
Yes.
It's
Moorhead,
okay.
yes. I'm still getting acquainted with some of the places in Kentucky. It was just outside of Moorhead. Rowan County coroner confirms that those two individuals were found deceased in a home. Their investigation that same day led them several hours away to Paducah, and that's where KSP arrested a 44-year-old by the name of Joshua Cottrell. Now, Cottrell does have a history here in Harding County. He is connected to a different death investigation that took place back in 2003 with a conviction ultimately against him in 2005. So what you're looking at here is Rough River Lake. That's back in 2003. So this case happened, like I mentioned, in 2003. Basically, what happened was he was convicted of a homicide or he's charged with a homicide that the details are gruesome. So I just want to make sure I'm getting these in an appropriate manner.
Sure,
Essentially,
it's quite grisly, and so as to the best that you can share.
Yes, so he accused a man of rape when he was 21 and said that he killed him in self-defense. Now, in that self-defense killing, he also shoved him into a suitcase, threw that suitcase in the river. It was found days later by fishermen on Rough River Lake. So what you're seeing here is him, that is Joshua Cottrell, in court in 2003. He was later sentenced in 2005. Again, a rough situation, but he actually said, again, self-defense. And what ended up happening was a Hardin County judge ended up taking murder off the table. Prosecutors, they wanted to bring the death penalty in this case. They ultimately took that off the table. They downgraded it to manslaughter in the second degree. And in doing that, what you end up happening is he gets the max sentence in Kentucky at the time for that, which was 20 years in prison. And he was also eligible for parole as early as 2007. And Jose, I was able to reach out to our folks at the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet. They confirmed he did serve time in prison up through 2019, and then he was on a reentry program and was fully out of their system for that crime by October 2019.
Okay, and so perhaps it's the weaving the web of decisions from back then, where the initial case was 2003. It takes that time for the conviction, but ultimately not for the murder, as you described, Logan. And so we know, depending on the crime you're ultimately convicted of, that's a minimum or maximum amount of sentences, or amount of sentence years for you in prison. But ultimately, you would parole out. We presume, given back then, if it had been the more severe charge, he may not have been out of prison in 2019.
May not. He may have gotten life. He may have received the death penalty. Who knows at that point? But again, that's the what if in this case. And again, what ended up happening was he goes in, he pleads self-defense, he pleads his case. And again, we actually, in pulling files, tapes out of our archives, we were able to hear the mother say, I hope that with the time that you have, to sit, that you look at your hands and you see Richie, that was the name of the man that was killed. You see Richie's blood on your hands. And so it's one of those things where, again, death was on the table here. It could have been life in prison. But again, because of the decision made by the Hardin County judge at that time, he got the maximum sentence that they were able to give him. So yeah, 20 years in prison for Cottrell, and again, released in 2019. Now, when you look at his criminal record as well, there was a couple misdemeanors and a traffic violation in 2023 and 2024, but nothing, again, to the serious nature that had been his previous conviction on that manslaughter charge in 2005. So, Jose, when you look at the way that this panned out, again, it's one of those situations where the court did everything they could in 2003. He was just out. He had done his time and just happened to commit another crime, another felony. And this time, two people, alleged, I got to put that out there, alleged to have committed.
And I know you probably were looking into this as well, but worth noting, because sometimes we do share some information just as far as whatever was corroborated with our partner, news organizations. There's something you had quoted in your reporting. It seems an affiliate found out, or someone was quoted as saying that it seems the alleged suspect and the victims here, at least the mother, were in a relationship.
Yes, so that was from our affiliate, the NBC affiliate, WLEX in Lexington. They actually got the chance to speak with a cousin today at a memorial. So if we can pull that video up, Jose, the memorial and the photos of the victims. If you go to I'd say about halfway through there's a memorial up for Kennedy and Kayla. A cousin who was there today spoke with our affiliate, WLEX, and told them that Joshua and Kayla, the mother of the 13-year-old and the 37-year-old.
Yes.
She was in a relationship with Cottrell. And from the reporting that I've seen from WLEX, our sister station WKYT, both in Lexington, we've kind of put together, just a little bit of who Kayla and who Kennedy was. We see a lot of photos. And just if you look on Facebook, a lot of photos of Kennedy playing softball. I believe that's actually where the memorial is at the softball field there in Moorhead. And then with Kayla, she was a nurse. So someone that, gave back to her community. And if I'm correct, she worked in a rehab facility. So, someone who worked with people that needed help. So two very young lives, two very bright lights in the community. And again, just looking up the names, scrolling through Facebook, you see the tributes, you see the photos, and it's, again, just heartbreaking for not only the family, not only their friends, but the community as a whole.
While you're here, Logan, and I do have you just to take a look at, I believe this is where officers were called to as far as the initial reports of what ultimately turned out to be the homicide was there at this crime scene, right?
Yes, so that's the scene there. And again, that's just a little bit outside of Moorhead in Rowan County on the northwestern. Again, I had to look at a map, make sure I had that right, but I believe on the northwestern end. Again, just a little bit northwest of Moorhead. As far as what I was able to find, just again in the reporting from our affiliates out there, from the information that we were able to collect, just going through this, it did appear that was, again, a discovery made Friday morning during a welfare check. So a coworker of Blake's,
of Kayla Blake's,
Blake's at the rehab facility, she called in a welfare check. She hadn't shown up to work. Moorhead police gets called out there. They then call in the coroner and they identify and pronounce both of them dead on scene.
And so, we're going to be paying very close attention, Logan. I imagine, not just you, but a lot of us, whenever Cottrell is expected to be in court, just to see what plays out next. What do you know about that?
So right now, this is actually one thing that was a little tricky in my reporting today, folks. So he was, the charges are out of Rowan County, again, an hour east of Lexington, but he was arrested in Paducah, which is in McCracken County. So he's currently in the McCracken County jail, facing 2 murder charges and a tampering with evidence charge. I called McCracken County. I tried to get the arrest slip to get a little more of an idea of what happened. They told me I think the circuit court put me off to district court. And then district court told me I got to call Rowan County because they're where the charges are out of. Their folks actually aren't in today. They're in a jury trial, so they couldn't get that information to us today. But as far as what's listed on the McCracken County Jail, his next court appearance will be on Wednesday morning. Now, I believe you would have to think, because the charges are out of Rowan County, that he would be extradited to Rowan County. But again, just could not get that on the record by officials today. And again, this was something that happened late in the day Friday. So it's one of those things where this is still going to be moving pieces up until he gets extradited and then shows up in court to face those charges.
And so as we let you go, and by the way, Logan's full report, can they find that information that you've been looking
Yes.
into on wave3.com?
Yes. So not only can you find it on wave3.com, but I've also linked to our sister stations reporting in Lexington. They were actually out there today at, again, the memorial that's shown up. And, one thing I wanted to note was, when you're looking at a story like this, there's always the human element. We are just focusing on specifically on the man alleged to perpetrate this. I highly recommend going to watch their report, watch the NBC affiliates report as well. I mean, that's where you're really going to get that human aspect, Jose, of, who was this young girl, this young woman whose lives were taken.
And both, a mother and a daughter who
Yeah.
I'm sure, just loved each other and lived for each
I
other.
mean, you saw the
You
pictures. I mean, yeah, it's a tragic story,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we're going to be following this as this unfolds.
I mean, appreciate your digging into this and your insight. By the way, always make sure to check in as Logan does his investigations, whatever story he's got, not just on wave3.com. Logan, I know, is also more active, I'd say, than I should be on social media.
Yeah,
as far as,
Facebook,
like,
it's
just easy
Logan
to
Wave
connect with
3.
him, so.
Twitter's Logan Wave 3. And again, story ideas, things
Yeah.
like this, send me a message on there. Emails logan.perone@wave3.com.
Excellent. Appreciate you, Logan. We're going to let you go, and we're going to take this time for a quick commercial break to reset on tonight's edition of Wave Extra. So we're going to do that 2-minute pause and be right back with much. All right, everyone. Thanks for popping back in. We're taking us outside, another view of our SkyTrack downtown skyline camera, enjoying some nice temperatures around 847. Hope you stick around tonight, by the way, once we jump off of the stream and prepare for Wave News at 11. Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harnett's going to let us know, heading into Tuesday morning, how things are going to feel. I guess we've been talking about this sort of warmer wave we've been dealing in, and certainly throughout much of the afternoon today, lots of you probably got that rain and some showers coming through. Just how long is that going to stick around in our neck of the woods? Hope you stick around as the storm tracking team is going to break all of that down at 11. A heads up here, Louder Than Life, Bourbon and Beyond. We just wrapped up the second of the back-to-back weekends, but it turns out they're going to swap the dates that they're going on stage next year. Danny Women Presents just wrapped up those big music festivals, and next year they say they want to switch things around. So 2026's Louder Than Life is going to happen first, September 17th to the 20th. We've already gotten news confirming one of the big headliners coming to Louder Than Life is going to be My Chemical Romance, probably a big name for a lot of you who grew up a certain part in the 2000s, that music for sure. And then again, Bourbon and Beyond is going to take place the following week. We're still working to learn and try to learn the total attendance numbers, by the way, for this year's Louder Than Life. And to that end, this year's Louder Than Life brought all sorts of different personalities to Louisville. Maybe you saw them as you were going out to the different concerts, or them coming off of the buses, leaving the cars, trying to walk across those big streets to get onto the Expo Center Fairgrounds property, just expressing their love of the music for sure. Well, want to share a special recap from one of our seasoned veteran photojournalists, Marty Pearl. He's been covering this concert, in fact, for years, very much since at least pretty close to when it first started. Marty's going to show us some of the sights and sounds he saw from his point of view. So hope you enjoy this.
Hey friends, Marty Pearl here, wrapping up another exciting weekend of music festival coverage, this time at Louder Than Life 2025, where I've had the distinct pleasure of being your eyes and ears on location. So take a moment to look back in fondness with me as I revisit some of my favorite moments from the weekend.
With extremely large crowds filling the fairgrounds all weekend long, Louder Than Life 2025 will certainly go down in the record books when it comes to attendance. Capturing a crowd this size with a camera often requires a higher angle to showcase the awesomeness of such a gathering, but even veteran photographers can sometimes fail to see the trees from the forest, as the old adage goes. And that's when you take the camera into the breach and find the characters that make up this momentary metal metropolis. Painted faces pepper the landscape, costumed creatures emerge from all directions, and a multitude of masked mutants and monsters march on to the next mosh pit. Surreal, absurd, and leaning heavily into science fiction at times, it's easy to get lost in the imaginative notion that you have traveled to another planet. And if this planet had a favorite pastime, it would most likely be crowd surfing. The act of being moved from deep in the crowd all the way up to the stage front railing while being hoisted and carried by frenzied fans ready to assist in the act. Sure, you may get groped along the way. You'll likely death grip your phone for fear of losing it in the chaos, or prioritize not spilling that beverage that's perhaps fueling the decision to even attempt such a crazy thing. But along the way, you'll probably get a few great selfies and finish the ride with a sense of accomplishment and adrenaline boost. One of the things to remember about being a festival photographer is the irony that the music being celebrated is not actually being captured in the process. That means performance becomes the real priority and approach. Case in point, meet these guys, Insane Clown Posse. They're Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, a hip-hop duo out of Detroit with a faithful fan base known as Juggalos. They travel with, well, an actual Insane Clown Posse that throughout the show spray, squirt, splash, and dump onto the fans a copious amount of a Detroit soda known as Faygo, complete with a demonic custodian that refills the stock. So whether you like their music or not, it's a visual spectacle that no photographer would pass on capturing. While ICP was definitely my favorite act to capture with a camera, my must-see act personally was Cypress Hill. The Psycho Beta buck-down rappers of my misspent 20s transported me right back to 1992, when parties were held in smoke-filled basements and Germantown rentals. Frontman B Real provided the stage effects with his own rolled-up smoke machine, and the resulting photography was some of my favorite. As the weekend concluded on Sunday night, attendees were certainly left with memories of shared love, happiness, metal, and partying in a crowd of their own, making Louder Than Life 2025 one to be remembered.
Well, that wraps up coverage here from Louder Than Life 2025. So until next year, Marty Pearl, Wave News.
Can't say much else. Unique master at his craft there are Marty Pearl. Must have been a fun time getting all those glimpses and those vignettes of what was probably a very rockin' festival out there. Reminder, Marty's piece, by the way, and so many of our different reports, investigations from throughout the day, right here for you to peruse on wave3.com, right there on the home page at the very top. Scrolling down, countless stories that we update thanks to our digital team, just making sure that is as updated as possible. I would say right there, that is our Marty Pearl's part of our Marty Pearl's coverage there from Louder Than Life, but certainly it all is connected together, hyperlinked for sure. So would certainly encourage you to follow us on that. Set up the push alerts on your phone for the Wave News app and the Wave Weather Now app as well. We are at 8:54. Hope everyone enjoyed checking in with us tonight. We're going to be back on the TV side of things and on the stream on Wave News at 11. And we will be back here in studio for Wave News Extra Tuesday at 8:05. As always, appreciate your time. We're going to see you all on a Tuesday. Take care. We'll see you then.